You're listening to the Jeremiah Show. I'm your host, Jeremiah. Welcome back. All right, I got to tell you about something pretty cool happening here this next coming week. Acme Hospitality, Santa Barbara Wine Collective, and Lokita have announced a two extraordinary culinary events with award-winning chef and author Tony Tan, celebrated for his knowledge and his skill in Asian cuisines and cross cultural cooking worldwide. He's the author of the award winning Hong Kong Food City, which won Best Asian Cookbook at the Gourmand World Cookbook Awards. Congratulations, Chef. And his latest book, Tony Tan's Asian Cooking Class. It is the definitive guide to regional Asian home cooking. And Chef Tony is headed to America. Chef Tony Tan will be a guest chef at Lokita Pop Up on Monday, August 11th. That's coming up quick. So put that down on your calendar. Monday, August 11th. And on Tuesday, August 12th, Chef Tan will host an in person dumpling demonstration at the Santa Barbara Wine Collective, followed by a multi course dinner. Born in Malaysia to a Chinese restaurant family, Chef Tan moved to Melbourne in the 1970s to study Renaissance history and Chinese language. After college, kind of took a turn there, I think. After college, he turned to his family roots and became involved in the food scene in Australia, owning two groundbreaking restaurants in Melbourne and Sydney, and in his never ending quest to continue his culinary education in the culinary arts. He went to cook in France and studied at Leith in London. Back in Australia, he conducted food tours and he won the Australian Travel and Tourism Award in 2008, the Kurosawa Collection, in the Best Tour Operator category. He's appeared on TV. He's written for Gourmet Traveler and many publications and opened a cooking school. He now lives in Victoria, where it is 5 degrees today, where he runs an intimate, sold out master cooking class. And he writes award winning cookbooks and he tends to his vegetable garden. Welcome, Chef Tan.
Thank you so much for that fantastic introduction. I'm staggered that you found out so much about me. It's
Well, I hope it
scary.
was all true, and I'm sure there's much more that I couldn't find. I wanted to say, I was so tempted to say, welcome to Santa Barbara, because you're almost here. You're not here yet, but you will be soon, and you've never been before, as we were talking about. You've never been to Santa Barbara. What have
Never.
you heard about it? What are you most excited about doing aside from these two great events?
What I've heard about Santa Barbara is they say that it's a very, very beautiful place and it's really worth going to because it is unique amongst all the places in California. Apparently, I was told that it's like the Hamptons of the East Coast. So I was just thinking, oh my goodness, how on earth didn't I know about Santa Barbara? I've just heard of the name, but I didn't know how beautiful it is. And it has
Oh,
such an impeccable reputation.
yeah,
So,
you're really going to enjoy yourself. You didn't book your ticket for long enough, but that just means we'll have to get you back here.
oh,
So I
you
wanted to
know.
talk about your this passion you have. You have an incredible passion. Where does it come from? Where does that passion come from within you to have dedicated your life to educating others about cooking and sharing food?
I think the passion virtually is really very much driven by an amazing woman, and that is my illiterate mother. She was so passionate about food, and she was born in China. She didn't really quite have the opportunity because she was an orphan when well, she wasn't quite, but her mother died giving birth to her. And
Mm.
it just meant that, she was brought up by her aunts and so on. and they always talk about food. And then when my father started his own restaurant, she was like the driver, about making sure that everything was going to be perfect. I can remember the days when she would go to the local market, just like the way that we have farmers markets nowadays. She would
Yeah.
go to the local market, select the fish, and she would eye them ever so carefully, and she would turn around to say that I need 20 fish for the day, but one is not as good. Can you change that? And that's where that comes from. And she
Mm.
would, and in our house, she would grow papayas, she would grow mangoes, and she would fondle them as though they're like little children because she has put so much energy into it. And so all that has reinforced in me, a very in-depth understanding and a love for food, which I think it's just ingrained into me. It's part of my DNA. So that's one of the reasons why. And because I grew up in an atmosphere where we always talk about food, and it's not as if that we are being greedy, but it's because it's the culture behind it that makes such a huge difference. And that's how it all came about in whatever I do, be it
Well,
if
that was my other question. I think you described what it meant, what the role of food in your family, what that meant to you. What's the role of food in your culture? What is that role
Well,
that it takes?
in the case of my family, because we own restaurants, and my mother, in her later years, my father actually bought her a little cafe so she could do whatever she wants to do with it. And so it was really very much like the depth of it all. It's all about trying to understand what makes a dish, for instance, like her roast chicken is one of those really very famous things that she came up with. And it was like, why is it that you have got to put in something that's a little bit foreign in into Chinese food, but she managed to blend it in such a way it makes sense, and so, and the idea behind it is also because that, there is food has got no borders, because this is the
Hmm.
beautiful thing about food, and that is, if you are able to understand something that is totally alien to my culture, for instance, like living here in Australia, we have native ingredients. And that is something that I haven't even got around to talking about. But, when you introduce something like a native pepper, it's a pepper berry. But if you introduce it ever so judiciously, it just sort of opens up an entire corridor. And that's where it's just so exciting to sort of see that, you know, um, why hold back? You
Yeah.
embrace something that makes it so special. And that's where all that education that I've had as a kid is now coming to the fore.
Now I'm imagining you, a little boy in the kitchen or, at your mom's side, just watching and observing her as she cooks. And is she teaching you at one point? Does she start to teach you her
Yes,
the methods, I guess, and the traditions?
yes, of course. I mean, uh, because I grew up in Malaysia, and she would be virtually like, there is an Indian neighbor that who was really very, very good to me, and they are, that's how I got my name. My name is Tony, right? And the Indian neighbors, one of the sons had become a Catholic priest. And so, the Indian neighbor would hand my mother, some curry leaves, for example, and so she would introduce curry leaves into the dish, and like it's actually in my book. And it was really very much like, okay, well, we've got these curry leaves. What do we do with it? We cook that with into scrambled eggs. We introduce that into our curries and so
Mm.
on. And that's where those are the classic examples I can think of. that made it so really very special. And she would make me smell, those leaves. And, and it just meant that, it was like as a child, when you're about 5 or 6 years old and you smell something that's completely fragrant, something that entices you and that tempts you to sort of understand something a little bit more than what you put into your mouth,
Yeah.
and this is where it becomes exciting.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, as a trained chef, what are some of the core techniques that you consider essential for really mastering Asian cuisine?
From that kind of background, it is one thing that it's always really very important, and this is what I do in the cooking classes that I have here. Always taste, always taste. And no matter if you are doing a stir fry or that you are understanding the heat sauce that you use to turn up something that's really uh, excellent as opposed to being mediocre. I'm trying to be very careful about what I'm trying to explain now because I know I'm on air and it makes me nervous. But
If
you,
you
you
want me to cut
understand.
anything out, I will.
No, no, no. But it's all about like you're given a wok, right? And
Right.
because a lot of Asian food uses a wok, be it if it is going to, well, it has different names. That's about it. And you've got to understand the heat of it all. You've got to understand how thin that metal is. You've got to understand,
Mm.
when to adjust the heat, so therefore you can either amp it up and it really becomes really very, very hot. So it virtually sort of singes the food and it cooks it ever so quickly. And then, if you need to sort of pull the heat back a little bit, you've got to understand that's also equally as important. So
Uh,
that's the kind of stuff that I teach my students here. And they all look at me and they say, wow, why didn't we think of it? Because we're so used to, when we fry a piece of steak, we keep it as it is, then afterwards flip it over. But Asian food is slightly different. And this is where there's all that fantastic magic about it
yeah,
all.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, how do you teach? How do you approach balancing like the five basic tastes, sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami in Asian dishes? How do
Jeremiah, it really, really comes back to this taste. This is
you,
what I always say,
taste?
and my poor students, when they come to the cooking class, for the first time, for some of them, for the first time ever in their lives, they've got little spoons on the side of the wok or of the pan. And then there are little spoons for them. It's a taste, so they grab hold of a spoon and they taste, they say, oh my goodness, I put in too much sugar, or something like that. And then so I said, well, because you've put in so much sugar, you've got to add something else to counterbalance it.
Mm.
So you may have to add a little bit of chili, or you may have to add a little bit of
Right.
lemon juice, and that's where it's so important that those kinds of flavors, you know, Asian food is all about, that's what I was trying to explain. It's all about harmony and that balance, be it whatever, call it whatever you like, but
Huh.
life is all about balance. Food is exactly the same.
I love that. I love that thought. I love that idea, that thought. Are there any misconceptions when you're teaching and working with new students that they have about Asian cuisine that you'd like to clarify?
Yes, there are a few things. I mean, um, edit whatever you like, but every time I see some of the students who come in who don't really know that much about Asian food, and they are all really very curious, and this is where the diabolical side of me takes over, and I say, you're all virgins. And so therefore you've got to break that conception, the idea down, and then you start walking your way slowly into it, and you start integrating them into understanding how, to use the wok, how to use the fire, how to check out why you use that soy sauce as opposed to using a fish sauce, and how do you look at that food with beautiful, clear eyes and just say that it's the wonderment of it all. That's what I'm also trying to explain. Like, uh, I get excited because, when they look at chili, they look at makrut lime leaves. How could something that actually came from the Americas, that came all the way to Asia, and that we managed to sort of merge with makrut lime leaves, for example? How do we manage to sort of combine, chilies into something that becomes totally Asian? Like there is one very, very famous sauce from condiment from Sichuan province, and it's called doubanjiang, and doubanjiang just means that it is soybeans that has been fermented, and you add chilies to it, and it creates that fantastic harmony of flavors. And that's what I do to teaching my students about how flavors work. And then it just opens up an entire universe of tastes. And that's what I do. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes perfect sense. And I love the idea again of harmony. I've spent this last year on a show called the Kimi Kato Show, and we've been exploring Japan through the whole year, throughout the year, and the traditions of the culture, and the holidays and the cooking and the drink and all that stuff that's in Japan. And I've been sort of fascinated that that idea of harmony, I think in the Asian culture is really forefront, isn't it? And um, it sounds like it's also uh, a part of the cooking, a part of appreciating the ingredients, the nature, the harmony, the balance of life. If I'm hearing you correctly with your ingredients and your dishes, would that be true? That
It
it's
was
it's
so
very
true. Yes, totally, totally. Because I mean, life is all about harmony.
uh-huh.
Life is about, there is the underlying principle of philosophy about coming from Asian cultures, be it if it is going to be Japanese, Chinese, or Indian. We always believe really very much in something that is what's day has got to have a night. What is hot has got to have a cold. What is pungent has got to be balanced by something that is salty. And so that's the beauty of it all. And I love the idea of, like, even though, I'll use a dish as an example, okay? Like, if you are going to serve something that's really very soft, it's got to be, it's then the following dish has got to be hard. If it is going to be in the entire universe of a particular food on a plate, something has got to have softness, like, for example, tofu. And
Hmm.
then you've got to add a little bit of uh, peanuts, for example, or you add a nut. So it
Interesting.
just means that, that harmony is so beautiful because it's all about balance. And then once you've got the balance right, and I have to say this, and I find that, some cooks get it and some don't, including my peers as well. And be it if it is going to be Asian food or otherwise, if you don't have that harmony, it doesn't really quite work. It's about having that beautiful balance. And then once you understand that balance, you just then the world it's it's your oyster. It
Mm.
really is, and I can't wait for you to come and taste my food. That's a little bit of an enticement there.
Could you get here a little quicker? That's too far away. I'm ready now. You've already enticed me. I'm in. Chef, and do you think about this very often? Do you contemplate this idea, the idea of where you've come from, your traditions, your influences, and how your culinary journey reflects those traditions and influences from your mom, from your region, the city that you grew up in, your next door neighbor? How often does your food and your journey reflect those memories?
A lot, a lot. I mean, I live, well, as you probably know by now, that I don't live in Melbourne, except that I live out of the city, which is just about 90 minutes at most from.
87 miles I saw. I did my research.
Oh, wow. And it's in an area that's really truly beautiful. In fact, it just won the award for beautiful small towns in the Australian category. And so, we have anything from truffles being grown here to saffron being grown here. I've got, every time I sort of look out into my garden, I may see a kangaroo sort of hopping by. But I, I just feel that, I've got to be connected to my current heritage, which is living out in the country. And I've got to understand how all that comes together from all those years of cooking as well.
Hmm.
And I have to say that I've been super, super lucky to be born into a family who really appreciate good food. And it's not only about fuel, but it's also understanding about culture. I've also have got to say that I've been super lucky to be born in Malaysia, whereby there are three major, if not four, influences that have actually impacted me. And that is the Chinese influence, the Malay influence, which is very Southeast Asian, the Indian influence. So, and then of course there's the Brits who came along and colonized us years ago. And so all those cultures and all those influences have distilled into me somehow or other. And it's exciting because I can sort of latch on to something that's from India, something that's from Southeast Asia, something that's from China. And all those regional influences have made me the way that I am. And I find, it's every once in a while, I'm hesitating because I'm staggered uh, by by my good fortune,
Mm.
and that is I have been so lucky that I can understand all those influences and how they have impacted me in the most beautiful way. Um, and that is, there are times when I do wake up in the middle of the night and I said, how did that idea pop into my head? You know, um, and it really sometimes is a bit scary because I don't really quite know why, but it's a lot to do with the respect and
Mm.
the acknowledgement of my good fortune and my good, by the grace of whoever that's up there that have actually taught me how to appreciate the beauty and the magic of good food.
Well, that's such a beautiful idea and thought. I I hesitate to ask you any more questions. I feel like that was such a powerful realization that you just shared. And
But we all do that,
Mhm.
Jeremiah. But
I don't think we
sometimes
do
we
it
just forget.
enough sometimes, but
Yes.
it feels like you're aware of where you've come from, your good fortune, the harmony and the balance in life. And then I have so much respect for what you do because I think feeding people and the idea around a table and people gathering is really one of the most simple but the one of the best things we can all do, right? To enjoy what the earth has given us, those ingredients, and enjoy someone that is talented enough to bring them to life and the flavor. And it's just, sharing that a meal with someone is so special. So I have so much respect for what you do and what you've just shared with us. Um, I'm just curious. I think I know the answer to this because I've looked ahead to your menu. But is there a favorite family recipe, chef, that holds a special or a special significance to you?
Excuse me, sir. For starters, do you mind not calling me chef? I feel a little bit embarrassed. Just call me Tony, that's all. Uh,
Okay.
uh, yes, there is. I mean, like I said, my dear illiterate mother, who, had such uh, a the only word I can think of is that she had an unconscious intellect, who was able to sort of put flavors together. And and this is why I've just felt that, as part of my legacy to this wonderful food community that we all belong to, and that is to showcase one of her favorite dishes, and that is her roast chicken. And that is, who would have thought that, a simple chicken, could turn into something that is stunningly beautiful. In fact, when I did the tour, of talking about my cookbook in Australia, and that is, I was cooking in an Italian restaurant, and there was a TV personality who was there, and she was shocked to see that, that this roast chicken had such a revelation on her, because it had flavors of butter, it had flavors of soy sauce, it had flavors of, this is where it becomes even funny, it has Worcestershire sauce, which is
Mm.
so British, and she introduced that into the dish, and then she added mustard, which is not really very much used in Chinese food or Asia, yeah, well, Chinese food in particular. And then she put all those four disparate ingredients, but the way that she sort of put them all together created that beautiful balance, created that mystique, which made that dish her signature dish, and so now that she's no longer with us, it's now has gone to my nieces, and it's gone to my sister's family, and it's just sort of spread around Australia tremendously, because I get pages, via Instagram and all that. It said, I made your mom's roast chicken.
Uh,
And and it's just like, yes,
yeah,
and so her legacy lives
it
on.
lives
And
on, lives on.
yes, and that's so beautiful.
It is.
So, could I just say this, Jeremiah? And that is, food is about sharing, food is about love, food is about respect, food is about giving. And if you don't give, something dies. That's what it really comes down to.
Hmm. That's a neat way to look at it. Well, let's talk about the events that you're flying halfway around the world to grace us with your presence and your recipes and your food. Um, let's talk about those a little bit. So I hope you're okay. Can I call you chef in your title?
Tony, just call me Tony.
Tony Tan brings his signature flavors to the Lokita kitchen for an exclusive one night only pop up dinner. That's Monday, August 11th. I think that's a week from today, isn't it? Yes, it is. It's a week
Yes,
from today, 1 week from today. Monday, August 11th at Lokita, 202 State Street here in Santa Barbara. Reservations are recommended with Resi. Go ahead and do that now. This is going to sell out. Goes 5 to 9 p.m. You want to be here for that. The second event is Tuesday, August 12th at the Santa Barbara Wine Collective. One night only with Chef Tony Tan. Oh, I said chef. Dumplings and Asian Delights. It's on 131 Anacapa Street in Santa Barbara. It starts at 6 p.m. and you can get your tickets via Ticket Sauce. I'll put the URL, the website, in the copy of the podcast, so you can go there and get your tickets, or you go to acmehospitality.ticketsauce.com. One night with Tony Tan, dumplings and Asian delights. All right, so let's talk about the menu, Tony. Lokita's menu. You've got, if you don't mind, I'll tell you what I see here and squid ink pot stickers. You've got oysters with my dressing, lemongrass tofu, pincho, and pandan chiffon cake. That's a great menu. That's at Lokita the first night, Monday on the 11th. Do you want to tell us about any of these recipes and what they mean
Of
to you?
course. Yes, of course. Taking into consideration that I was born in Asia, Southeast Asia in particular. So, it's like understanding how lemongrass, because I find lemongrass out in the garden. I find makrut growing in the garden. I find curry leaves growing in the garden. I would also find pandan growing in the garden because they're like weeds, so it's super duper easy to sort of come up with recipes and ideas and so on. So years ago, when uh when we went through that craze about, Thai food being, one of the hottest cuisines in the world, and it is. And so, I came up with the idea of plucking things from my garden again. Because we use fish sauce and then we use palm sugar because those are really very essential things that we use regularly. And so, and I came up with these ideas with oysters with my dressing because it has very Thai type flavors because in other Asian cultures, for instance, in Malaysia, cook we don't cook with coriander roots, but the Thais do. Even though there are certain parts of northern Malaysia that they do use coriander leaves. So what I did was I just threw in everything and added a little bit of fish sauce, added a little bit of lemongrass, added a little lime leaves, and it became my sauce. And I use that for so many things, but it is particularly sensational with oysters. So that's one of them. And the other thing was lemongrass tofu, because we use lemongrass all the time, and so what my mother used to do is she would virtually sort of cook lemongrass with the tofu. And she said, so what if it is not really very Chinese? Who cares? That's what it really comes down to. And then further down the track, when I was in Vietnam, and I found that it was used, but what they did was they added turmeric into it. And so that became lemongrass tofu. And then squid ink dumpling, further down the track again, here I am, living here in Australia, have never used squid ink in a dumpling. And I saw, the Italians use squid ink in their pasta. So what I did was I just somehow borrowed it from the Italians, made my squid ink dough, and then roll it up. And then, in fact, I've got some that's drying away in the kitchen. And then made that into little dumplings. And it was sensational because if you look at this, try visualizing it. The squid ink is black in color, and the filling is made with scallops and prawns, or as you call them, shrimp, and you add whatever else you want to add in order to give it more depth and flavor. So when you split open that dumpling, it is black and white. Isn't that fantastic?
Crazy.
Yes.
Beautiful.
And then
And food
panda.
can be beautiful too. It can not only taste
Yes,
amazing, when
yes.
you put it together right, but it can also be just stunning
It
visually.
is It is stunning. It's absolutely stunning. And then the other thing that I'm doing at Lukita is pandan chiffon cake, and when I started talking with the beautiful people at Lukita and Acme, I was telling them about pandan, and they said, well, I have never tried it before. Let's give it a go.
Mhm.
So I am trying to find that image for you so you can see for yourself that it is so beautiful, and it has that beautiful chartreuse color, so can you see
Oh,
it?
yes, I can.
Yes. And
Yes.
it's just fantastic. So it's just like,
Too
oh my
pretty to
God.
eat. That's too pretty to eat.
It is, but it's so beautiful and it tastes sensational. Truly, truly sensational.
Oh, I'm counting down the days till the 11th.
So there you
Marking
go.
the calendar now. That's beautiful. Well, then let's move into the Santa Barbara Wine Collective, which is the very next day. And I actually, before I move on, you will be obviously there and signing your cookbooks and there to meet everybody, right? And talk about your process. The next night, Tuesday, the 12th, Santa Barbara Wine Collective, the menu, you've got past canapes. And we want to start there.
Yes, one of them is called dumplings with curry oil and watermelon curry. I
Uh-huh.
think that's going to go around, and that I think it's very exciting as well. I'm quickly, desperately trying to find the image of that for you to see. So that means you can tell your audience about how delicious food can be. And if forgive me for being a little bit slow because it is, after all, only 7 o'clock in the morning here in Australia. um, and
Thank you for waking up early for us.
no, thank you so much for having me. Look, this is it. Can you see it?
Yes, I can.
So that
I can
is.
almost smell it. It's coming through.
So that's mushroom dumplings with curry oil. And I am trying to find a watermelon curry for you so you can see how beautiful, beautiful that flavor is. Who would have thought that watermelon can be so um, delicious when it is used in a curry? But here you are.
That's interesting. I've got to try that. I haven't had watermelon and curry. I'm a big curry fan. Oh, that's really pretty. So this is out of your cookbook.
Yes,
This is out of Tony Tan's Asian cooking class that we're looking at.
yes.
Okay. I want everybody to go pick up a copy on Amazon or come down and meet Tony, and he's got signed copies there for you. So then appetizers, you've got mushroom dumplings and Thai duck curry dumplings. And are you showing people how to make a dumpling proper? Is that part of
Well,
the
I have now this will be known in America because here's a confession. Friends call me dumpling.
friends call you dumpling?
Yes. Hi, dumpling. How are you?
Term of
Initially,
infection.
initially, I was a little bit shocked that I'm being called a dumpling, and now it is just a sign of affection. Yes, you're quite right. And so, I will, of course, this dumpling here is going to tell people how to cook and make dumplings at a cooking demonstration. Yes.
See, that's to me, that's very interesting. I want to just see that, even if I didn't get to taste the food. And this is where I sort of cheated and I leapt ahead when I referred to your mother's roast chicken recipe. I already knew that it was on the menu at the Santa Barbara Wine Collective night.
I see. Okay. Well, you just have to come and taste it.
Yeah, I have to now. The way you've built it up so much in my mind, we're definitely going to go down and try that. There's a lot more on the menu: spring onion pancakes, a soba noodle, Sichuan dry fried green beans, dessert, macaroon, lime leaf creme brulee. Oh, this sounds so good. And you get to take home, I guess you're going to send them away with some walnut biscuits and a signed cookbook. What a special night. That's again next Tuesday, the 12th, at the Santa Barbara Wine Collective. Tony, unfortunately, I'm out of time, but this is a good precursor to meeting you. This is the prequel, and
I
I'll see you in person, and we'll continue the conversation.
I guess in America you call it, a starter is called an appetizer. Is that right?
That's right. That's even a better way to say, look at this. This was just a little appetizer, and I hope that we've teased you enough to go down to one of these events and meet. award-winning chef. It's in your title. Sorry, Tony Tan. All right, Chef Tony Tan's cookbooks are praised for their clear instruction, beautiful photography, and insightful commentary on Asian ingredients, techniques, and culinary tradition. The latest book, Tony Tan's Asian Cooking Class, you can get it on Amazon or wherever you get a book, an Asian cookbook written with fresh eyes by an author whose soul lies in Asia, but who has adopted techniques and ingredients from the West that endear his recipes to cooks everywhere. Structured by food type, from meat, poultry, and seafood to vegetables and dumplings. Don't forget the dumplings. Tony Tan's cooking class takes readers through the fundamentals of more than 100 beloved dishes, many core to uh, to Tony and other dishes that he has made his own. Tony shares insights on the key building blocks from the art of the work, the walk, excuse me, and the work to understanding the role of oils and fats to Noodles 101 and the essential pantry. It's beautifully photographed, thoughtfully illustrated, and evocatively written. This is the essential book for a new generation on the essential foods and techniques of Asian cuisine from a beloved teacher, a cook, a writer, and a respected expert. You can go to Tony Tan's website. It's tonytan.com.au. You can also follow Chef Tony Tan on Instagram to see his adventures in his life and in his cooking on Instagram at TonyTan53. Tony, thank you so much for being here today, for getting up early, and safe travels to the United States and Santa Barbara. We can't wait to see you next week.
Thank you so very, very much for having me on your show. I am tremendously honored and quite humbled by the knowledge that you have of me. And I am a little bit emotional about it all, but thank you for having me. And I look forward to seeing you when I'm there in Santa Barbara. Thank you again. So
Thank
this is
you.
a Chinese
Uh,
way of
uh,
saying thank you.
and may I thank you, Dumpling. All right, everyone out there, communicate, but listen more and taste more. Get out there and evolve. We'll see you next week. Thank you.